Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Williamsburg City Council meeting of July 6. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernshire. Here.
Okay. Nice that you all could be here. I know we all had a great 4th of July and probably still recovering in some ways. All right, item 3 leads us into items for City Council meeting of July 9th. Council preview, City Manager DeWitt.
Absolutely. We have an exciting agenda starting with an Excellence in Service Award to Maureen Ryder with the Human Services Department. And then we move into the 2026 Vote Sticker Design Contest winners. We have 2 winners from the Public Art Council, and both of them are students, and they will be here to receive their recognition and to reveal the design of the stickers. And then you have 3 public hearings. One is a General Assembly requirement that we change the minimum parking requirements for residential use within half a mile of the transportation center. And these are the minimum requirements. It does not mean a developer could not do more than that, but these will be minimum in our zoning ordinance. Secondly, Seven Hills Restaurant is ready for the long-term license agreement for outdoor dining on Prince George Street, so that is for your consideration. And then the last public hearing is a request from James City County. They will be submitting a smart scale application for funding for improvements on Route 199 at John Tyler and at Brookwood Drive. While this will not involve Jamestown Road or the City of Williamsburg, VDOT has asked for our blessing on this. And then your reports, your financial reports. Operating reports, we will have the farmers market and the new Millstone market presented by the Parks and Rec Department to tell you about that. And then we've added, the fire department will give an overview of the events of July 4th and how that all was. And then we have some new business. We have an ordinance that will instruct our finance department how to collect cash now that there is no longer a penny, how they will round up and down to nickels in that case, and this is a requirement by the state code. We will also we're asking council to authorize our financial advisors to go to the market for there's an option, a call on your general obligation bonds that were used to build the police station and the public works yard, a $24.4 million call in October. We want to be prepared for that, so they're asking to go to the market for options of refinancing that if necessary. Then there's a license agreement renewal for William & Mary Real Estate Foundation right here in the Northington Park parking terrace for them to use 26 spaces. They pay for these. This has been an agreement with the city for more than 5 years. This is a renewal of that agreement, and they do pay for those parking spaces annually. Then we have an amended charter from the Hampton Roads Workforce Council to change the regional boundaries to bring the Eastern Shore into our regional district, and Gloucester will move to the Bay Area district north of them. And then lastly, our Microsoft 365 contract is due for renewal, as it is every year, and it's greater than $100,000. So while that is budgeted, it requires City Council action.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for Michelle, or Ms. DeWitt, excuse me?
No.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to a public comment, and this is an opportunity for anybody in the audience who'd like to come forward. I do have a speaker's card, Mr. Bob Wilson, Robert Wilson. Would you like to come forward and talk?
Turned up my hearing aids. My name is Robert Wilson, 22 The Palisades. I wanted to just raise some questions with you with respect to proposed resolution 2616, and that's the refinancing of the city's debt. And I want to do it today in order to give the city and Davenport time to perhaps respond and provide more information to the citizens of Williamsburg. As you're aware, I've been a strong critic of the city's debt and borrowing policies, and I think the city's proposed resolution 2616 on Thursday's meeting supports my arguments that the city really doesn't know how to manage its debt. These general obligation bonds were issued in October 2022 for $24,500,000 at an interest rate of 3.1% and a term of 10 years. Now the city represents that these bonds are callable by the holders of the bonds this October, and that the city now proposes to refinance these $24.5 million in bonds at $27 million, up to 30 years, and at an interest rate of 6%. Clearly a failed strategy that needs to be further explained. And the information that's attached to the city's agenda on Thursday leaves a lot of questions unanswered. You know, when I looked at the original resolution, I didn't see any language authorizing an early redemption or call by the bondholders. So why were they issued with such a call provision? Who made that decision? If it was Davenport without authorization, you know, some questions should be asked about who pays for the increased cost. Why did we pay no principal or interest on these bonds over 4 years? Now must borrow an additional $2.5 million. Normally, you expect a debt over 10 years, you're going to have some debt service, and you pay some principal and interest as we go along. Did we pay no principal, no interest against the $24.5 million? I think that needs to be explained a little bit more. Why are we contemplating paying 6% versus the existing 3% rate for an additional $800,000 a year? Clearly, I guess we anticipate interest rates have gone up, but it illustrates why, or the failure of the strategy to include the call provision in the original issuance of the debt. And are we really going to pay off these bonds over 30 years? I mean, that's what you're authorizing, or something less than that. It seems like if you're going to do it over 30 years, tell people what the accumulated interest rate that's going to be accrued over that period of time. What's the annual debt service compared to what the debt service that we're paying now on this same indebtedness? So a lot of questions with respect to this debt. I hope we hear some additional information at Thursday's meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period, and we'll move on to background presentations. And today, I'm excited to say that we have a presentation on the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. We have Mr. Stevens, who's chair of the HTRFA, with us, and Dana Yost, who's executive director. And then we also have Ben Horton here from Kemper, who's the general manager. So welcome, Mr. Stevens.
Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, and good afternoon. I do want to thank you for the opportunity today to provide an update on the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. I assume I can make this go in a minute? All right, so as I move that forward, it will move. Wonderful. All right, before I get too far in, with our grand opening on June 24th, we have another great attraction to bring visitors in to support our tourism economy. Mayor did the introductions, but I am Scott Stevens. I'm James City County Administrator, but today I am the chair of the Historic Triangle Recreation Facility Authority. Before I begin, I do want to congratulate the city on what appears to be a very successful July 4th celebration. Other than being a little warm, I've heard that comment, all I have heard is really good comments, and I just want to say thank you. I know it is a really big effort on part of you and your staff in Colonial Williamsburg, but well done and congratulations, so good job with that. I would also like to say thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council, for taking the lead role in supporting the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. From concept to opening, you have certainly been a champion from that. From your financial support to serving as our fiscal agent to keep the HTRFA moving forward and providing the support for that, and for allowing your staff to support this project over the past 4+ years. In addition to your former city manager, Andrew Trevette, your current city manager, Michelle Mixner DeWitt, and your interim assistant city manager, Robbie Hutton, who have served and represented the city on the HTRFA board, we have had regular support from many of your staff members. I'm going to name a few and probably miss out, so I always hesitate to do that, but the ones that I have seen year after year after year have included Barbara Dameron, your finance director, Mark Barham, your chief information officer, Dusty McCray, your city clerk, Nicole Trafone, your PIO, Travis Dill, your purchasing agent and risk manager, and Michael Lewis, your multimedia designer. I know there are several others that have provided support as our fiscal agent, and I want to thank all of them on behalf of the HTRFA for their work on this project. Without their support and effort, in addition to their regular jobs, this project would have been much harder to get there. So thank you to you and your staff for supporting us all these years. As we look back at the timeline, this presents significant steps that led us to the groundbreaking for the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center in the summer of 2024. And I'm going to provide the history and then let Ms. Youst and Mr. Harderwin talk about construction and sort of operations from here forward. An indoor regional sports facility has been talked about in our community since at least 2014. The most recent discussion began in 2019 when the Williamsburg Hotel and Motel Association applied to and received a grant from the City of Williamsburg for the design and construction of an indoor regional sports facility. That led to the formation of a working group with representatives from each locality meeting to review further studies, and resulted in a recommendation to our elected officials in November of 2021 to form the Historic Triangle Recreation Facilities Authority to further study the feasibility of such a facility. Following the formation of the HTRFA, we received an unsolicited proposal for this project, received another proposal that we evaluated, selected a design build team, secured a ground lease for the proposed site, evaluated possible facility operators, and came back to our elected officials in each locality in the fall of 2023 with better cost estimates for construction, leasing, staffing, and operating the facility. We recommended at that time that the localities proceed with approving the funded agreements for this project. All three localities approved the funding agreement in December of 2023 that allowed this project to move forward. So one question is, what is the HTRFA? We've talked about it some, at least in the opening, and for me, it's really an extension of localities. You form this governmental entity with representatives from York County, James City, and the City of Williamsburg. Each of us have 2 board members representing the localities to make up this facility. Our first project, again, is not just the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center, but that was the first project we evaluated as an authority. I wanted to go backwards and share in 2023 slides that we presented to you and really compare it to where we ended up today. So in 2023, these slides were shared with each of our elected bodies. Our original scope was for a 160,000 square foot facility. It was 12 basketball courts, 24 volleyball, 36 pickleball, ceiling mounted basketball goals and volleyball goals, scoreboards, the tip and roll bleachers, curtain dividers, all that you see listed here. And we have done all of that in the current facility. During design considerations, we added some additional, after touring facilities, some additional 40,000 square feet to include a conversion turf system, which we now have in place, and I feel confident we can roll out and roll back. Can't do it in a day. It takes some time to plan that in and out, but I think we have the ability to do that. We did have a rock climbing wall and a ninja gym initially talked about. We have converted that to an adventure gym. Same purpose, trying to keep those that are traveling with their sibling or brother, sister here entertained while they're in our facility, and then for our local use during the week as well. So again, we replaced that with an adventure gym and then really good architectural enhancements. I have said all along over the years that this will be the most attractive gymnasium you've ever been into, and it is. It still meets that bar today, and I think will going forward. What is shown in this picture is some bleachered seating. We didn't do bleachered seating. We never proposed that, but I did want to just say that's not what we showed. We showed the turf system was what was represented here. But we did build, I believe, what we said we would build almost 3 years ago. So I'm really excited about that. Come back to the financials of that. 3 years ago, we told you it was an $80 million project. It was an $80 million project and still is. So I'm really excited that we are still within that ballpark. The city was the primary funder of and backed the debt service, and I do thank you for that. I think that made it much easier for York County and James City County to be part of it. We have up to $800,000 a year each in operating costs to cover our reserve fund, our deficit if there is one, our lease payment, our operator, and other operating expenses. And I feel very comfortable moving forward that that is a really good investment for all of us. We all intended to use tourism funds, and I think going forward that will continue to be the case for all of us as this project goes forward in time. With that, I just provide the history. I want to invite Dana Youst to come up and really take us from the ribbon or groundbreaking in 2024 to the opening a week and a half ago.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
How is everybody today?
Good.
I put my glasses
Cooler.
on.
It's
It's a little
only
hot
90
out there,
today.
don't y'all think? Today I wanted to come and talk to you about the vision to reality. The slides that I'm getting ready to show are going to highlight the partnerships, the milestones, the community support that made this Greater Williamsburg Sports and Event Center a reality. The project represents, as you well know, years of planning, collaboration, and commitment across all three localities. Regional collaboration was the foundation, I think, for this project. The City of Williamsburg, James City County, York County, HTRFA board members, Visit Williamsburg, Kemper Sports, MEB, MBP, consultants, staff, and community partners such as Williamsburg Hotel Motel Association were all part of those efforts. No single organization could have done this project of this endeavor alone. We would also like to highlight the dedication of the project team, MBP and MEP, through the planning, design, and construction. Construction was completed approximately 30 days in advance and ahead of schedule while remaining within the approved budget of $80 million. We also wanted to acknowledge everyone who helped solve challenges and kept the project moving forward. The operation of the facility was especially meaningful because it was the 250th celebration. It showcased the historic Triangle's ability to deliver a world-class community asset. The grand opening was a tremendous success with more than 1,500 attendees, community members, families, partners, elected officials, media, and special guests celebrated together. We would like to thank everyone that made the day memorable. The groundbreaking in August of 2024 marked the beginning of turning a vision into reality. Today, we can look back with pride at everything accomplished in less than 2 years. So congratulations, everyone.
Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Ben Hardwin. I have the honor of being the general manager of this amazingly beautiful facility. And I'd like to echo what my counterpart said, that we appreciate the support. We've felt it from the get-go and continue to feel it, as I know we all champion this project towards success. So the first slide here is our mission statement. And for us, the mission statement tells us, where do we want to go? What's our value promise? What do we want to do? So our mission is to deliver elevated sports and event experiences that bring people together, support health and wellness, and strengthen our community. Locally rooted, nationally relevant, and hospitality driven in every detail. So that tells us what we want to do. What my team and I are working on right now is how are we going to do that? And that's what we're spending tireless hours putting things together, breaking them apart, putting them back together, breaking them apart as we're going through the learning curve of this facility, its capacity, and its overall ability. We found success already in scheduling events. We have events that book all the way to 2030 and a wide variety in our portfolio, which I'll show you momentarily. But we're well over 100 events now booked and secured, with literally more each day calling us now that people are seeing the facility and the ability to host different events there. So this is just a sampling. Obviously all the traditional sport opportunities, but in addition to that, high rocks, ultimate frisbee, flag football, cornhole, and a variety of other things. On the conferencing side, we actually have a wedding that we will be hosting, corporate retreats, an upcoming car show, a variety of banquets that we've already, several that we've already hosted, gaming conferences, food and wine, and so forth and so on. So it's limitless in regards to what we can do, and we're excited about the flexibility of the facility and the portfolio that we'll be able to have as far as our events. From a community standpoint, we, back to our mission statement as far as being locally rooted, we want to have as many types of opportunities for our local community residents and even non-residents traveling here as possible. So we will be hosting and creating a lot of our own in-house programs, some of them listed there on the left. And then we do have play options, which I just left there. It was busy, so our community is received that very well. As far as pickleball, basketball, volleyball, the turf will be rolled out, so they'll be able to play soccer and so forth. The Adventure Gym has been a hit in many ways. We're still learning all the ins and outs of the Adventure Gym, but it has been very, very busy, and we keep getting rave reviews for the Adventure Gym. So as I said, part of the how for us is to create a culture that is uncompromising in our values and elevated so that we take the experience that you would normally have at a sports venue and make it best in class. These are the individuals that are going to assist me in doing that. I'm very excited about the talent and depth and skill that's on the slide here. But we have our sales and marketing manager, Heidi. Antonio Gonzalez is our sports and operations manager. BJ Armstead is our facility maintenance manager. Katrina White is our controller and also assists me in HR issues. John Tandy, who's so popular, his name is in bold, is our executive chef. Julia Soto is our guest services manager, so Julia oversees our banquets, but she's also the foundational person at the guest services desk because we felt that initial impression was incredibly important. And then Mr. Dalton Newkirk is our Adventure Gym manager. Okay. Questions?
Well, thank you, Ben, for the information. It is very exciting when you're in the facility. I obviously serve on the Visit Williamsburg board, and to hear about how this facility is attracting much attention from future visitors, and as you point out, your own sales teams, we've got over 100 events booked there. So the question relative to that and your experience within the Kemper franchise, because you all manage facilities across the country, how does this facility, in your mind, differentiate itself from the competition?
So, truth be told, I'm new to the Kemper environment, but I've been in there enough to know that this is the signature piece in the Kemper portfolio. And there's nothing like this facility in the country. There are places that might have 12 courts and state-of-the-art amenities, but they don't couple it with the banquet and food and beverage side, or they don't have the Adventure Gym feature and so forth. So it is a standalone facility, and I'll just very quickly, anecdotally, I did a tour of a national basketball group, and when we were done the tour, he was on his phone calling all of his coaches saying, try to get out of the contract where we are, let's get over here immediately. And he said this is the most aesthetically beautiful facility he's been a part of in 20 years running his organization. So I expect that to continue to grow, and as we build inertia and continue to get the word out on a national level, which we are doing, we will be in a position where we'll be fighting off business, which is a good thing. For next year, we have 5 weekends. 2027, we have 5 open weekends. The rest of the calendar is completely full for weekends as far as events and banquets and so forth. So it's only the beginning.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And you're still seeing, as you point out, great interest moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
Thank you for assembling that great team. I've been to a couple banquets there, and Tom's name in bold makes sense because he does prepare some great food. But thank you for the work that you're doing to make sure that the facility stays pristine and in good operation. I know it's new, still has that new shiny smell, but we want to make sure that it remains attractive and in a place that folks want to come, because obviously there's a significant investment in bringing this forward. And when you think about the 100 groups, there's 30,000 room nights, I think, already booked as a result. But beyond that, one of the exciting things about sports now in Williamsburg, we have this facility, but we're also looking at sports in more holistic sales type parameter. And we're seeing increased visitation to our softball fields and the turf fields outside. So sports is really an untapped market for us. So I think we're going to see great dividends from this investment and beyond. So thank you for being here. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank all three of you for being here. And Mr. Stevens, thank you for your leadership on HTRFA and for James City County's partnership in this facility and York County's as well. One of the things I have to catch myself when I'm talking to folks is I'm glad you keep talking about events, because it's easy to say the sports center. So I'm trying to program myself to say sports and events center. So when you talk about bookings, could you give a little bit of context of how far-reaching it's been so far outside of Virginia? Most of it in Virginia?
Some of it in Virginia. We have groups like Love Volleyball. We have Southern Volleyball that's based out of Georgia. We have a group coming out of the Midwest, based out of Chicago. That's a basketball group. Top of my head, we've got a group in Colorado we're talking to right now about doing kind of like a fitness expo event. So it is reaching further and further west and further north. We are pulling from the northeast right now, so we're going to continue to market into Washington, D.C. and above and further north. And, again, the facility standalone is exceptional, but then when you can layer on that, as Chair Stevens said, I'm there for my 15-year-old, but the 6-year-old is driving me crazy. You can put the 6-year-old in the adventure gym, or they can have a snack, or we can have a catered lunch. Just left a meeting on the way here, very large basketball event. So we're bringing them in for the basketball, but they're very excited about the fact that they don't have to leave the facility. So we're going to do box lunches for them. We're going to do a coach's banquet at the end. So we really can take that experience and expand it in every direction. So exciting part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's what we all envision, that it's just not about Virginia, it's reaching across the country and hopefully from around the world to bring people here to Williamsburg. I know you touched on it, so you're seeing a lot of participation in the just drop-in play and the adventure gym?
We had to expand the pickleball courts today to a whole nother set because from day one to today, we've used, today was 16 courts, 16 pickleball courts going at once. So basketball was there when I left, volleyball was there. We had 2 groups playing mahjong in the hub, enjoying coffee and enjoying snacks. So it is pulling the community in as a gathering place, which I believe we all wanted as well. So absolutely. And the adventure gym continues to be a hit amongst the young folks, especially in the heat.
Yeah, I'm sure. My grandson signed up for a basketball tournament the 20th through the 22nd there, so
Fantastic.
I'm excited about that.
Good.
One thing I did, before I end, I did want to say thank you to everyone that participated in planning and executing the grand opening event, and for everyone that attended. I mean, it was an awesome event. For me, it was far more people there than I would have anticipated for that event, and I think it really showed the support from all 3 localities, the communities, and what we see in the future of this building. So appreciate all the work that all 3 of you are doing. So looking forward to the future of this facility.
All right, that's okay.
Apologies.
So thank you, but I did have a couple questions. One of them was about where people are coming from, but the Vice Mayor covered that one. But my question also was, in this industry of sports, big sports events, is there sort of a standard time in advance that groups book their tournaments, right? So I'm thinking of is it normal to book a year in advance when you have a big tournament, or 2 years in advance? Kind of, what's the time frame that this industry usually operates in?
Minimum of a year.
Minimum of a
2
year.
to 3 years in many cases
Okay.
in advance.
Okay.
And in some cases with us, we look contractually to have a group for multiple years.
Okay.
So, in some cases, if we want to free up that spot, a group might be looking 4 years out. So in general, about 2 years, year at the minimum, but
Okay.
2 to 3 years is on average. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious about that. And I will say, maybe it was the day after the opening or 2 days after, I came and I sat, and my son went in the adventure gym, and because he wanted to go back, and so I sat there in the entryway and just did work. And I will say that I hope that caregivers and parents in Williamsburg do realize that that is an option to do, because as somebody who raised my family here, having an indoor space where you could know that they are safe and having fun, and you're able to kind of get some work done, and there were snacks there. It really is a big value to the community. And I don't want to undersell that in any way, because that really does make a difference in the daily life of a parent or a caregiver in town, to have a safe place to go that's inside, whether it's raining or hot, with your kiddo. So as a parent who's already done that, and it's not, I know that there's the Adventure Gym, you can get a full day pass, but then also with the drop-in play, those are things that you can do just like a day pass or a season pass, or what's kind of some.
Right now, we're doing a day pass. We're also doing, you'd call it a punch card in theory. You can buy a pack of 10 or a pack of 20, and it's discounted then per drop-in. We had talked about membership models and a variety of other kind of things. We felt like we need to start pretty simplistic. Let's get a pulse and a feel of what the building can handle, the traffic flow and so forth. And then we can expand on some of those offerings.
Yeah, and I will say I was pleasantly, not surprised, but I was just pleased to see when I was sitting there that day, there were people almost like steadily coming in, from the community just to check it out. And so I encourage, if people haven't done that yet, to go do so, especially in the heat and everything. So it does seem to be, obviously these big events are that is what we need and what we want, but to really put a fine point on how this is an amenity for the community, I think is a really important point as well. Thank you.
Don't go nowhere. Ms. Ramsey.
Yes,
Yeah, don't leave.
I'm not.
thank you to Ben, Dana, and Scott for being here, and I'm just thrilled with the new center. I'm going to shortcut it to GWSEC because it's a mouthful to keep saying all of that. And having taken a couple people through there, both before it opened and after it's opened, to me, two of the key points are collaboration and flexibility. And you all brought out how the three municipalities have worked so well together, and now with the HTRFA and with Kemper all working together, I think that's really key. And also the flexibility, when you look at all of the different events that are there, the sports, some that I don't even know what they are, like what's High Rocks or whatever that is, and some of the, I know about the gaming conference and the wedding, of course, and things like that. But I was a little curious about some of those events that are going to be open to the public, say the boat show and the food and wine conference and things like that. How will that publicity be distributed, and sort of how far? Because I don't think anyone from, Columbus, Ohio is going to come for a boat show, but they may come for a sports tournament, obviously. But so can you give me a little bit of information about that aspect of the more public open events?
Absolutely. So the marketing strategy is when, and we're not there yet, we're building towards it, is that when we secure an event, especially a large event, that there's an immediate announcement that such and such is coming to Greater Williamsburg. Could be a year out, could be 6 months out. Then, as we get 30 days out, we start to build our promotion and our exposure with increasing frequency at the 2-week mark, and then again at the 1-week mark, that, don't forget, this Saturday is the home show, that type of thing. The predominant way to do it is through social media. It's just the cheapest and easiest and most widespread way. We're still working on our website with our calendar. It's a little tricky because of the open play concepts and some of the other things, but that will be the other way that we will put our events out publicly that people will know. We're also building a database, so when you come in to use the facility, you set up an account. We now have your email address, so we will start to blast out HTMLs and other marketing collateral pieces to remind the community and beyond that this event is occurring at a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever.
Good. I do know that social media has become extremely prolific. I don't get all of it, and I do find that Facebook, which is the one, I'm older, so Facebook is sort of my thing, that you find it once and then you try and go back and find it again and it's sort of gone. So I'll look forward to you all having a calendar that I can refer back to and do that. And as far as sort of spread wide, so those announcements would be out there for anyone who is following the GWSCC or
Correct.
so. And just sort of two things to follow up that you had said. You mentioned Mahjong, and I ran into someone in the grocery store the other day who said, yeah, I've just been out there playing Mahjong. So can you just sort of walk in and have a table and...
Walk in, you can have a table, grab a cup of coffee. You know, the design and the business flow is that it would be open for the community. It'd be a community center where you could come in and sit and have your children play or come study or watch a show on your iPad or play a game. And again, as we said in our mission, we want it to be a gathering place. So we want it to be a place that magnetically brings people together around sports and events, but also community things. It could be a Mahjong game. It could be a book club or those types of things as well. And some of it will be organically built through us, and some of it will be partnering with existing, you know, a bridge club or a Boy Scout, Girl Scout group, whatever, that we kind of house their program, and we build and expand upon that.
Yeah, I'll have to be sure to bring my bridge group out. Maybe
Okay.
we'll play sometime.
I was there
You ready?
yesterday playing Mahjong. so-
Oh, really? And I assume that Wi-Fi has a really strong signal there, and you can just sign on unsecured or get the password from the front desk or whatever?
It's a public Wi-Fi. You can just
Yeah.
log on and use it. Yep.
Good. And you mentioned something about the turf system, and a friend of mine's son rode out there on his bike a day or so after it opened, and he didn't come home for hours and found out that he got involved in a pickup soccer game. So is the turf sort of rolled out upon request, or, I mean, you can't do it, like you say, in an hour. Or do you have a portion of it out every so many days, or how's that working?
So it's definitely not upon request. It would be very challenging to do that. It's a very labor-intensive process, and it certainly takes a fair amount of time because we have to clear everything off the basketball court. We have to clean it to make sure there's no pebbles or rocks or anything that could scratch. And then we have to bring the winches over and
right.
pull it out. So you really disrupt the entire space when you're doing that. So the philosophy is that when we understand our event calendar, that we go through a seasonal format where we roll the turf out for a month, 2 months, 3 months at a time. And that's aside from events, like we have a flag football tournament
Right.
coming up in August where we will pull it out for that event, obviously. I'm talking about specifically community use. The challenge on our end, which is a good challenge, is we're hosting programs, we're hosting Parks and Rec programs, we have AAU things happening, we have a wide variety of things happening, and we always want to allow for our open play. So finding that balance where when we pull the turf out, if it constricts us so much that we can't offer open play, then that may not work. The only open play option would then be soccer or something on the turf. So we're looking at our calendar and trying to understand the trends and the right time frame where we can roll it out and keep it out, because it is fairly labor-intensive process.
Well, and I understand that it can be out in sections too.
In thirds, so you can do
Thirds.
1/3, 2/3, or the full length, correct?
Yeah. So, thank you, and I also appreciate the collaboration with William and Mary. I think one of the first events is their volleyball
That's correct.
camp, and I imagine other universities will appreciate the, having this facility available for them too. So, I don't have any other questions for you. I did want to make a comment. Mr. Stevens, you commented about the 4th of July celebrations that we had, and I want to thank James City County for their support, particularly for the fire department, the police, and I think your drone operators. I understand they were the hit and really helped out a lot. So it was truly a community, another community event incorporating help and support from all 3 municipalities. So thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, so I just wanted to echo what's already been said. Just thank you and your team and also the board for just a really awesome facility. That's really culminated, I was looking at the timeline since 2014, a 12-year process that culminated to what we saw a couple weeks ago at the ribbon cutting. And just to think too of over 1,500 attendees at the ribbon cutting, and I think that's a testament to just really the work that's been done over the past 12 years to make the facility what it is today as well. And throughout our discussion today, I really was thinking about our really big return on investment that we've already seen. Just to think that we already have tournaments and events booked out until 2030, as well, is just really remarkable to see, and looking at the 30,000 hotel rooms that have already been booked, and also just over 100 events too. It's just really, really great to see. I actually walked through yesterday, and I was really just out of curiosity, just wanting to see how the facility was operating kind of in a non-event setting, and it was really just great to see. There was, children in the adventure space and people on the basketball courts as well. But I wanted to talk about something else about the community aspect. I found myself looking at all the quilts that have been hung up on the walls as well, and just thinking about how this is not just a events and sports center, but also a community gathering space, like you mentioned earlier. I had two questions, so it's a kind of a two-part question. We talked a little bit about marketing strategies, and I was just kind of more curious to just wanted to ask as well, what are some of the marketing strategies that you and your team have implemented when either reaching out to tournaments or sports groups or event groups coming to the area? What does that look like?
So I'll answer that two ways. One is we have a very strong partnership with Visit Williamsburg, and really as a subsidiary, I guess, Sports Williamsburg. And we work very closely with them to go out after certain groups. We're looking for new types of business, not necessarily the same old basketball, volleyball, but to bring new people to the area as well. So we work very closely with them daily. We go back and forth, and so we kind of tag team the approach to go out on a national level. So we attend conferences, we are in different publications, we've done some national marketing to try to get out and share the exposure that we're open and ready for business. On a more local level, when the facility was not open, we were highlighting all the amenities, right? The turf, and look at all these court space and whatever. And it's a wow factor, but to some degree it's an emotion-less factor, because it's just bricks and mortar or wood. So we're transitioning now to more of the emotional side of sports. The dad on one knee with his daughter, holding a basketball, the kids smiling in the adventure gym, people gather around a mahjong table having fun, and kind of bring personality to our messaging. And we hadn't done that up to this point strategically, because we didn't want to use just a bunch of clip art if we didn't have to, or not clip art, but stock images. Now that we have people in a facility and we have a marketing campaign in place, you're going to see a lot more of that. So you'll feel the facility. You saw the facility, now you'll feel the facility in a much more impactful way.
Well, that's great to hear as well, and I really appreciate your efforts. I know that's kind of more the behind the scenes of, going to different conferences at the national level, but also I really resonate with the local approach as well. Kind of honing into more of that emotional approach, bringing people out to the facility. And I had one more question as well, just going back to earlier you mentioned that during the process of bringing different tournaments in, within the contract, looking at different groups that might want to come year after year. Do we have any organizations that have committed to a multi-year contract?
We've got several that are 3-year contracts right now. For us, I think that's the set point. Most groups want to kind of test drive us, and I think we want to test drive them and make sure that they're the right fit. We also want to make sure we have the right escalators in place as inflation and things rise and expenses rise on our end, that's being reflected in what we're charging. So we do have several that are at the 3-year agreement mark.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. And if PR gets a little slow, you can call on me. I'll do the back dive off the thing. I've already got 120,000+ views on that, so
Viral.
count on me.
Viral. All right.
Thank you all three for
Thank you.
being here. Okay, now even more exciting, we're going to move on to our legislative update. Ms. Shelton.
Mayor and members of council, thank you. Every year, I present a 30,000-foot overview of the legislation that came through the General Assembly. There were almost 1,200 bills that were passed by the General Assembly this year. You're going to see 40 slides of substance, so very high-level overview. It's not intended to be exhausted. I know I say this every year and I sound like a broken record. I'm really focused on the things that council may be interested in, the things that council will see again, and things that are going to impact the operations of the city. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to start with the employment bills first because there were a lot of them. House Bill 1 increases the minimum wage to $13.75 per hour beginning January of next year and to $15 an hour effective January 1st of 2028. And then beginning on January 1st of 2029 and every year thereafter, the bill provides that the Commissioner of Labor and Industries will adjust the minimum wage rate by the percentage change in the Consumer Price Index. And the change can't be less than 0. So it will never go down. If there are increases in the CPI, it will go up. But if there are no increases in the CPI or it goes down, minimum wage will stay the same. Employers are required to pay wages at the hourly rate of either the federal or state minimum wage, whichever is higher. Right now, that's the state minimum wage. House Bill 636 prohibits certain employment actions regarding wages. So, for example, seeking wage or salary history from an applicant, relying on wage history in considering a prospective employee, relying on wage history to determine wage history or wages to be paid to a prospective employee, retaliating against an employee for refusing to provide their wage history, failing or refusing to disclose wages in job postings, and failing to set a wage rate in good faith. This bill also creates a private right of action for a prospective employee who feels that this statute has been violated, and damages can range from $1,000 to $10,000 plus fees and costs. Senate Bill 199 requires employers to provide 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked and allows accrual up to 40 hours a week of sick leave per year. So right now we have different categories of employees: full-time benefited employees, part-time benefited employees. There is no difference for purposes of this bill. If you are an employee, for purposes of the statute, you're entitled to an hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. There are also civil penalties associated with knowing violations of this bill, anywhere from $150 to $500, plus double the value of any unpaid sick leave that were not paid in accordance with the statute.
This is for all employment,
Yes.
not just government.
That's right. Senate Bill 2 creates, and the VEC, the Virginia Employment Commission, is required to administer a paid family medical leave insurance program. Employer contributions begin April the 1st, 2028. Benefits under the program begin December 1st, 2028. The insurance program is funded through payroll deductions from every employee, in our case of the city, in an amount that is to be set by the VEC that has not been set yet. Employers have to fund at least 50% of that deduction. So if the deduction is $10 a paycheck, the city will be required to fund $5 of that at minimum. The city has the option of funding a larger percentage of that deduction. The benefit provides qualifying employees 12 weeks a year of leave, just like FMLA does, that are paid. The benefit program administered by the VEC covers 80% of the employee's average weekly wage, and there's a minimum and a maximum amount of that. Employers are permitted to provide this through private insurance to cover their costs. assuming the VEC approves that program and they comply with the insurance program requirements in the bill. It's very convoluted, and it's going to take a little while to get the regulations from VEC. House Bill 1092 requires the Safety and Health Codes Board to adopt regulations to protect workers from heat illness in conjunction with the Department of Labor and Industry. So the standards are required to include providing water, accessing shade and climate control, providing rest period acclimatization, training, implementation of high heat procedures, and emergency response procedures. The regulations are going to be handled by the Department of Labor and Industry and will be applicable to the city. There are exceptions for emergencies for law enforcement, EMTs, firefighters, and utilities, and for heat exposures that last less than 15 minutes. And that is a duplicative slide, so I'm going to move on to the next one. House Bill 1313 amends the definition of qualifying event for workers' compensation presumptions for post-traumatic stress disorder to clarify that there does not need to be an accompanying physical injury in order for the public safety employee to have benefits under workers' compensation for PTSD incidents. House Bill 925 extends the complaint period for filing discrimination claims under the Virginia Human Rights Act from 300 days to 2 years. So right now, the state and the federal claims for things like violations of Title VII or the Virginia Human Rights Act are both currently 300 days. Now, a state claim, the statute of limitations is 2 years. This primarily for the city, in my experience, applies to employment-related issues, but it is not limited to employment-related issues. So if there's a discrimination complaint from a citizen, it would also be subject to that extended statute of limitations. All right, so I'm going to move on to affordable housing, which was another hot topic at the General Assembly this year, and I'm going to talk about the bills that allow localities but don't require localities to adopt provisions related to affordable housing. Should be House Bill 4, allows localities to provide for the imposition of a right of first refusal on housing that has been publicly supported, and that right of first refusal can last for 15 years. So if there's an affordable housing project and the city contributes to the cost of that affordable housing project, as part of that, City Council may, by ordinance, require a right of first refusal on the property. House Bill 164 allows localities to provide for local government employees or school employees housing assistance grants. These are for down payments. Currently, those are capped at $25,000. The cap has been removed. House Bill 346 provides that localities can, by ordinance, fund an affordable housing grant program and have that be administered by the Economic Development Authority. House Bill 1144 provides that a locality can provide a full or partial reimbursement of water and sewer connection fees, capital recovery fees, and availability fees, all associated with water and sewer connections, for new residential development properties that are sold to first-time home buyers. None of these are required. These are all optional. House Bill 594 allows localities to provide an expedited process for affordable housing projects. So essentially what this bill requires the locality to do, if you choose to take advantage of it, is to identify an area of your locality where high density is appropriate based on the services and facilities that are available in that area. And then City Council has to, by ordinance, adopt a program to allow for the zoning administrator to approve those projects. There are additional notices that are required for adopting the ordinance in the first place, though, so you're getting that on the front end instead of at the rezoning stage. Senate Bill 74 authorizes localities to provide for an affordable dwelling unit program. And in this are a lot of the things that they have been able to do in Northern Virginia for years and years and years that no one else in the state has been able to do because they were specific to Planning District 8. So those tools include increases in density, contributions to affordable housing trust funds, reducing lot size, inclusion of duplexes through quadplexes in single-family residential areas, converting commercial and industrial spaces to housing, granting specific financial incentives. So that's just sort of a really high overview of the things that they have been doing in Northern Virginia that are now available across the state. Now we're going to get into the things that we don't have a choice about with respect to affordable housing. House Bill 1279 permits religious organizations and nonprofits with valid real property tax exemptions under state law to construct by right affordable housing. Localities can impose only an administrative approval process on those developments. The developer has to have owned the property for at least 5 years prior to making the application. The bill allows for an increase in density and height, reducing setbacks and parking requirements. The development can be residential or it can be a mixed-use development, but at least 60% have to be affordable, and that has to last for 30 years. There's also a limitation on the type of commercial uses that can be contained if someone chooses to do a mixed-use development. One thing that we have is that the historic area requirements would still be required to be followed. So all of the ARB guidelines would have to be followed for development that was in an AP or CP district. This bill doesn't take effect until January the 1st, and it expires January 1st, 2031. But with this caveat, both during the recession in the 2008 timeframe and also during COVID, there were bills that had sunsets, and those sunsets universally were extended. So my expectation is this program is successful. The sunset probably will not stay in place. Senate Bill 531 requires localities to include ADUs as a permitted use in all single-family residential zoning districts. It prohibits localities from requiring setbacks that are greater than the primary dwelling or more restrictive conditions regarding height, lot size, coverage, or building frontage. Localities also may not require the occupants of the ADU and the principal dwelling to be related to one another. It does require the owner to occupy either the primary dwelling or the ADU at the time the ADU is constructed and building permits are issued. But that does not extend to subsequent sales of the primary dwelling and the ADU. It sets the maximum size of an ADU to 500 square feet. The minimum size is 350 square feet if the size of the lot is less than 2,500 square feet. So that's the range, 350 to 500 square feet. And it allows localities to prohibit the use of an ADU as a short-term rental. This bill does not take effect until July 1st of next year. House Bill 655 requires localities to permit manufactured homes in all zoning districts in which site-build housing is allowed. That means every single-family, multifamily neighborhood. Prohibits localities from adopting any zoning, land use, or development regulation that treats manufactured homes differently than site-built dwellings, and removes the authority of localities to designate the areas of a locality in which manufactured homes can be located. This is one of those situations where homeowners association restrictive covenants are probably going to be more restrictive than our zoning ordinance. When we talk about manufactured homes in the bills, we're talking about homes that are on wheels that can be moved from place to place. Once they have been attached to the property and they complete the process with the DMV to convert the property from tangible personal property to real property, they're considered on the site. This bill also does not prohibit localities from imposing their historic district requirements on manufactured homes for existing or future districts. And it doesn't impose any limitations on homeowners associations. So again, our CP and AP district regulations will apply. And so we're going to have to add this to the zoning ordinance and update the guidelines to address this. Last year, we had big changes in how we process site plans and subdivisions, and House Bill 135 extends the work group that was commissioned to study the review and approval process for subdivision plats and site plans, so my expectation is we will get more changes next year. House Bill 277 prohibits localities from denying application for the modification of existing wireless facilities if it doesn't substantially change the dimensions. This is going to primarily apply to private property because it explicitly does not apply to wireless facilities in public rights-of-ways. This is towers and poles and small cells. Substantially change, however, is a fairly broad definition in this bill. The excavation or deployment of transmission equipment within 30 feet of the base station is not considered substantial for purposes of this bill. We're going to need to adopt an administrative review process. It's going to have a 60-day deadline for these reviews. House Bill 876 requires localities to allow for the temporary support structures for wireless facilities. So these can be poles, or they can be the trailers that move wireless facilities in that we're used to seeing in the city. Requests can be approved for up to 180 days, and those requests can be renewed for up to 2 years. But the request has to be made for a specific reason that's outlined in the bill, such as testing, supplementing coverage, if another wireless structure is removed, emergencies, and what we're normally accustomed to seeing, special events, or any other reason that council deems appropriate. House Bill 711 mandates that zoning ordinance include a special exception process for smaller ground utility solar projects, and that's defined as projects of 1 megawatt or more on commercially zoned property, and then it provides regulations that have to be included in your zoning ordinance. Previously, 5 megawatt facilities were what were considered utility grade solar projects, and we just simply don't have the land to host a 5 megawatt facility. With the reduction in size, we're going to need to add this to the zoning ordinance because a 1 megawatt facility is a much smaller facility, and according to my research, can be fit on as little as 2 to 3 acres. House Bill 1234 permits a locality to require solar canopy on surface parking areas. This would apply only to non-residential development with 100 or more parking spaces and can only cover up to 50% of the parking spaces. So a commercial development that has 150 spaces, you could require solar coverage for 75 of those spaces. However, the ordinance has to apply equally. So if you adopt an ordinance with this requirement, it would apply to the locality, it would apply to schools or any other authority that has a big parking field. And you would have to impose those requirements on yourselves and schools and other authorities like HTRFA, for example. It requires the elimination of landscaping requirements for qualifying parking area, impervious surface limitations, except that those are required by the state. You have to allow separation of the title for the solar facility from the real property, and you have to allow for a process to deviate from the requirements under the ordinance if the solar field isn't going to generate a certain amount of energy that's provided for in the bill, which is a fairly complicated formula that involves a lot of modeling. House Bill 888 is what you're going to see on Thursday. It limits the amount of off-street parking for residential, multifamily, or mixed use within a half a mile of a transportation facility, which in our case is the train station, or it could be an enhanced structure. An enhanced structure for purposes of bus shelters, which is what we have, is a shelter that's upgraded. So a larger shelter with real-time displays and additional accessibility features, and we don't have any of those currently in the city. So this is really going to apply only to half a mile from the train station now. But keep in mind that as we add enhanced facilities over the years, that half-mile radius for reduced parking requirements will follow those enhanced facilities. House Bill 833 permits localities to include in your subdivision ordinance the requirement for EV supply equipment, EV-ready charging spaces, and EV-capable parking spaces on commercial, industrial, or multifamily residential uses. So for apartment buildings and commercial developments, we can put in our subdivision ordinance a requirement for EV stations.
Ms. Shelton, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, my brain, can we go back to the one you just did, the one that we're going to see on Thursday? Because I just want to make sure that I understand. When you say it limits the amount of off-street parking, does that really mean it limits the amount of off-street parking that we could require?
Both
on an-
off-street and on-street.
So if we said to, you know, our requirements say that in order to build a residential unit, you know, you have to have 2 parking spaces per unit, this would say you can't require that. You can only require 1.
That's right.
Okay, so I just want to, just in foreshadowing for Thursday, just sort of really thinking about what this means. It's limiting what we can do with respect to off-street parking with developments that are within a half a mile of the transportation center.
That's correct. And what you're going to see is a new revised table with those reduced parking requirements.
Okay, thank you.
And it's only for future developments.
That's right.
I'll add, it does not prevent a developer from building more parking. We just cannot require it.
The Department of Energy was tasked with designing and deployment of infrastructure. So they're studying what infrastructure would be necessary to provide for charging stations in single-family and multifamily developments moving forward. Their findings are due November 15th, 2026, and if that study results in something that seems feasible, I would imagine that we'll see legislation next year. I wanted to touch on data centers. I don't want to spend a lot of time on data centers. Again, similarly to solar, we don't have big fields for data centers to locate on, but I did want to talk about them a little bit. House Bill 507 prohibits DEQ from issuing air permits to generators that don't meet their emission standards. House Bill 889 declares that the policy in Virginia is to locate electrical transmission facilities in existing infrastructure corridors before new ones are created, and it creates a work group for VDOT to study regulatory amendments to facilitate how to locate that infrastructure in highway right-of-ways. So basically, data centers need to be located where there are big transmission lines, and where can we put additional transmission lines that can facilitate data centers, and say that in a better way that isn't legalese. Senate Bill 94 requires localities prior to the approval of a rezoning or an SUP application for a data center to require the applicant to perform and submit a site assessment regarding sound on residential units and schools within 500 feet. It also requires site assessments for other siting issues such as water impacts and historic resources impacts. The bill is clear that it doesn't supersede local zoning authorities. City Council ultimately decides where these data centers are appropriate, if any, in the city. All right, moving on to finance. House Bill 474 increases from $75,000 to $125,000, the maximum value of a parcel, for which we can basically skip a tax sale and have a special commissioner either convey the property to the locality or to a land bank or to a nonprofit for non-payment of taxes. So this, when I started practicing law, was $10,000. It was really, really small, and over the years it's creeped up to something that actually makes perhaps a little more sense in the city of Williamsburg at least. And then House Bill 954 requires localities to establish rounding procedures to accommodate the fact that they are not producing pennies any longer. This is only for cash transactions, and you will see that bill, you'll see that ordinance on Thursday. That is a temporary fix. The Department of Taxation is required to evaluate uniform options that are going to be imposed on localities, so there will be uniform rounding across the state. But for now, it allows you to adopt an ordinance to address this issue. Wanted to talk a little bit about procurement. House Bill 1046 requires that for all construction contracts, the contractor and all its subcontractors have to complete state-mandated safety training programs. The bill also requires that if the construction contract is for more than $5 million, the contractor has to provide a justification to the locality for the payment of independent contractors as opposed to their own employees if the number of independent contractors exceed the number of employees of the contractor on the project. That justification has to include specific things, including a certification of a good faith attempt to hire employees instead of independent contractors, a description of why it's not feasible to hire their own employees instead of independent contractors, and that they've given the required statutory notice provided in the bill to their independent contractors regarding their rights and responsibilities to payment. They're also requiring the Secretary of Labor to conduct a feasibility study to require public bodies to hire apprentices on public works contracts. This is going to be extremely expensive for implementation. The delayed effective date is July 1st of 2027, so we have a year before these go into effect. This is going to require an addendum to all of our construction contracts. We have a standard form contract that we use in the city, but we're going to need to add an addendum to that to address these issues. House Bill 569 requires localities, when procuring contracts for public works, to ensure that bid specifications or contracts require contractors to pay the prevailing minimum wage rate for each class of employee who works on the project, and that's going to be set by the Commissioner of Labor and Industry every 3 years based on a survey of wages. So we are also going to have to require them to certify that they are paying their employees what the Department of Labor and Industry says based on the class of employee they have. House Bill 14 authorizes but does not mandate, and that's really important from my office's perspective, localities to enforce the Virginia Residential Landlord-Tenant Act on behalf of a tenant or occupant to enforce a landlord's duty to maintain a dwelling in a fit and habitable condition. So we already have the building code, which requires fit and habitable condition. This creates a new cause of action that can be brought by the City of Williamsburg on behalf of a tenant to impose the lease requirements on the landlord. Prior to filing that action, notice has to be provided to the landlord by codes compliance. Damages and injunctive relief are available to the tenant or the occupant of the property, but no costs are provided in the bill for the city's costs in enforcing it. This is a right that the city now has. The city council does not have to adopt an ordinance to enact this. However, I would suggest that we have a policy about when this is appropriate and when this is not appropriate, because you have exactly 2 attorneys who work for you, and it's going to be very hard to do this and codes compliance and everything else that we have to do if the expectation is that we're going to do this on a regular basis. Senate Bill 87 requires localities to ensure that automated external defibrillators are available at all local government sporting facilities, and this is effective July the 1st of 28. House Bill 1333 directs the Department of Fire Safety Programs to encourage employers to implement work schedules for firefighters that don't exceed a 42-hour per week shift. Currently, our normal shift is 52 hours. There were multiple bills this year about camera traffic enforcement. We don't currently have any areas of camera enforcement in the city. It's possible for us to have school speed cameras, but that's about it in the city right now. All of these are a little bit convoluted because this bill changed this part of how these work, and this bill changed another part, and so they all sort of conglomerate together. I'm just going to hit the highlights. House Bill 994 creates a safety red zone classification in Planning District 8. Again, that's Northern Virginia, but the definition of this is areas that the speed limit is less than 45 miles an hour and there's a high concentration of pedestrians. And I think we do have places in the city where at some point, should this get extended, they might be applicable in the city. I'm thinking about Richmond Road and Jamestown Road in particular. House Bill 1220 amends the existing authorization for photo speed monitoring. So now in work zones, workers have to be present for photo speed monitoring equipment to be functional. It requires the Supreme Court to create a unified summons that's used across the state for those types of traffic zoning enforcement. Senate Bill 84 adds pedestrian crossings in school zones and stop signs in work zones to photo enforcement authorization. So another option in work zones and for school zones in the city. Senate Bill 219 adds a second summons to the process if the person who has gotten a summons fails to show up for their return date in court, and then authorizes the DMV to place a block on vehicle registrations and license plate issuances until the civil penalty has been paid. So all of these impose a limitation on the use of revenue for these highway funds, these work zone fines, to highway safety projects that qualify under the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, and limit their operation to only times when work is occurring. Also, they have added a private right of action for individuals who receive a citation under one of these programs that's issued in a manner that's not consistent with state law, and it allows a court to order compliance with the limitations and forfeit any excess fines. So the cost, you take off the cost of having these cameras, and anything in excess of that gets forfeited until the locality comes into compliance. So a lot happened with speed cameras. I wanted to touch on COYA and FOIA. House Bill 505 provides that any member of a local governing body who has been employed by a governmental agency that's a component part of what the local governing body controls is prohibited from, has a personal interest in a matter in front of the body if it involves that agency for the next 2 years. And this did come out of Purcellville and the situation with their police department. And so if you happen to work for a city department, you would not be able to vote on a matter involving that city department for 2 years once you take your seat on council. Senate Bill 530 amends the filing requirements for your annual disclosure statements. So instead of being filed with the Clerk of Council, they need to now be filed with the COYA Council in Richmond. This is a phased-in process, so for the city of Williamsburg, it's January 1st of 2030 that takes effect. And there was one major FOIA bill, Senate Bill 699, which limits additions to a public meeting once the meeting has started. It doesn't prohibit you from talking about something that isn't on your agenda once the meeting has started, but it does prohibit you from taking a final action on that item once you have started a meeting. So if something comes up and you want to hear from staff about it, you're certainly welcome to discuss it, but if it is a matter that ultimately needs to be acted on by City Council, you would have to delay that action until your next meeting. It does not include referrals to a future meeting or to, say, the Planning Commission. It does not include direction to staff, and it does not include issuance of a commendation or a proclamation. Also, if you have a matter that's properly noticed for closed session, you can still come out of closed session and take an action on that. We had 3 proposed bills. 2 of them we were able to find a patron, so House Bill 552 are the amendments to the charter that the City Council adopted in November, and House Bill 783 is the high tourism locality parking. So we added to that bill a requirement that, or an allowance that if a locality has a high number of tourists that come to it every year, you could have a third party do parking administration and enforcement. That language was removed, and they just took the locality residency requirement out. And so in the event that City Council would like to have third-party enforcement and administration of parking, you are now able to do that. We also requested that our local legislative delegation and a number of legislators across the state sponsor a bill to allow for rental regulation and to reduce the number of years between when we can do rental inspection. It was a fairly comprehensive bill. We were not able to find a patron to take that legislation, and so it's not listed on this slide. So I'm sure that you know, we now have a legal marketplace that will take effect July 1st of 2027 with cannabis. The bill itself did not pass the General Assembly. The governor sent changes to it. Those were rejected by the General Assembly. The governor vetoed the bill. There was a compromise, and so that language was added to the state budget. It establishes the framework for the retail market. Licensure and operation of cannabis stores is controlled by the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. This bill, unlike previous years, does not include the optional local referendum to prohibit cannabis sales. The bill does include language that states that the bill does not supersede local zoning and business license authority of the city, and it provides specific regulations that the city can impose. We can regulate hours of operation, we can regulate location. There's a 3.5 local option tax on retail sales. We can also prohibit the consumption of cannabis in public parks, schools, playgrounds, public streets, and sidewalks. 350 licenses are authorized by the bill. It increases the fine for consumption in public places. So we have a year to work out where this is appropriate in the city and the tolerance of city council for the number of stores that you want to have and where they're located.
Ms. Shelton, several years ago, we already have language that identifies restricts locations, correct?
We said medical marijuana was not permitted in any zoning district, which was all that was legal, except for Quarter Path, out at Quarter Path. And that's the only place where we legally allow any sale of marijuana at this point in the zoning ordinance. House Bill 30 also includes a referendum process to levy a 1% additional sales tax to be used for school construction. The bill includes process language that enables localities to place a referendum on the ballot. So basically, you adopt a resolution saying we would like to place this question on the ballot, and you send that to the court. The court orders that question to be placed on the ballot. The clerk has to advertise it for a period of time. If the referendum passes, the tax can be imposed no longer than the bond term, or if you're not getting bonds, no longer than 20 years from the date of the resolution. So this is really best to wait until, if this is something that you think you might want to do, best to wait until you have a project to do it, because your time is going to run very quickly once the resolution is adopted. I wanted to talk about 3 failed bills. House Bill 1263 removes the prohibition on public employee collective bargaining. Right now, collective bargaining is at the discretion of City Council. This would have made it mandatory across the state for local governments to collectively bargain upon request of their employees. It established a public employee relations board that was to be created by October of this year to regulate collective bargaining for public employees. And the Department of Labor and Industry was supposed to develop initial regulations consistent with the bill. All of this would take effect July 1st of 2028. The governor made changes to the original bill that would have delayed the effective date for localities for a couple of years beyond that, so July 1st of 2030. The bill itself for state employees created 18 collective bargaining units, and they were a lot more specific than I think I anticipated them being last year from the previous bill. So, for example, the Virginia Department of Social Services had multiple collective bargaining units depending on the kind of work that you did. And using that framework, we could have as many as 12 bargaining units in the city of Williamsburg. The governor's amendments were rejected, and she vetoed this bill, but certainly the interest in this has not waned at all, and so I imagine this is coming back next year. Senate Bill 488 is very, very similar to House Bill 2641 from last year. It required that for a 5-year period, beginning next year, every locality was required to increase its total housing stock by 1.5% every year to reach a total increase of 7.5%. Every locality is required in this bill to develop a housing growth plan to meet that target, And in order to be considered a good faith plan, you had to include at least 3 of 9 specific strategies, including eliminating minimum lot sizes, simplifying permitting procedures for multifamily projects, rezoning single-family districts to multifamily, allowing multifamily as a permitted use in all your commercial zoning districts, near transit, repurposing office space, et cetera, et cetera. The bill also required modeling of how those strategies would create the housing that was required in the bill. This did not pass, thankfully, but this is the second time that we've seen some iteration of this bill. I guess alarmingly to me, appeals of the City Council's decisions were with the Board of Zoning Appeals in this version of the bill, which is a board that's appointed by City Council, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Last year, it was to a committee created by DHCD, so I don't think they've ironed out all the kinks yet with this bill. But I don't expect this is going to go away next year either. Similarly, House Bill 816 required the by right development and construction of multifamily residential uses on at least 75% of properties owned commercial in a locality. The only exception was for undeveloped parcels with tree canopy of 60% or more. Localities in this bill were prohibited from providing more stringent land use requirements than for commercial developments, and prohibited localities from requiring a special use permit or a special exception to approve the development. As this bill went along, it was amended in the Senate to exempt localities with a population of 20,000 or less, which was a good thing for us, but ultimately it died in the Senate before it could pass. And that is my last slide. Again, 30,000-foot overview. There are a lot of ordinances that you will be seeing as a result of the changes that were made this year and a lot of internal policies that will have to be addressed. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
I'm going to forego any questions. I mean, a lot of it's stuff we're going to have to deal with, and probably should reserve some of my comments because it may not be popular, but, just forcing minimum wage and tying that into CPI. I mean, how to raise wages, CPI is going to go, I mean, it's so self-fulfilling and it's going to be harder on small businesses. Anyways, Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Ms. Shelton. It's a lot of information to absorb, and I know you'll be bringing back the necessary changes. Also appreciate you taking the time to point out the bills that weren't successful this year that we need to be aware of for the next time, because as we know, a couple of those we spoke to this year, and I would anticipate that they're going to gain more traction towards the next session.
Yeah, I don't have any particular questions about any of the bills that I haven't already asked, but I do think it's important for everyone to pay attention to what happened and what didn't happen, and so I'm really grateful for you for putting all this together and having this available to everyone. And then, thinking to the future, we will be seeing the necessary changes to our local ordinances based on these, but just to keep an eye on the future a little bit, just in broad brush terms of timing, like when do we start putting together our legislative agenda, Ms. DeWitt, just so people kind of can understand that this does have a flow of the process, and here we are kind of at the end, kind of looking now about what just happened, and so what can people think about as we start to implement what has already happened, but then also, to Ms. Shelton's point, think about things that we still see on the horizon that we need to pay attention to, whether we are for or perhaps not for.
So the easy answer is it never stops. So we are
sounds like the
working
hard
on
answer.
that right now. I know that Vice Mayor Dent is our VML representative on the Legislative Committee for Virginia Municipal League, and they've already met about next session. So we are continually monitoring this. But in terms of some milestones, this fall we'll put together a draft legislative agenda for your consideration, and typically try to have the draft to you in October, the final approved in November, and then meet with our local legislators before the holidays and before the session kicks off. So all of this is a bit of a, we're waiting for news from the state, information from our partners and regional partners and strategic partners, but that's our typical expected timeline.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. I don't have any questions. As was said, I know we'll receive more information as each of these comes before us. So, thank you again.
Ms. Williams?
Well, thank you for the high-level overview of just kind of a portion of what happened this past session. I actually do have a quick question in regards to Senate Bill 531, and I believe it was on slide 14 in regards to the ADUs. Are the ADUs that are on properties within the ARB districts, are they subject to the same guidelines, or are they completely separate?
So they're still subject to the architectural review guidelines, just as any other single-family residential property would be. The setbacks can't be reduced. So the idea is to make it possible to do ADUs with this bill, but in a way that meets the character of the neighborhoods.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Shelton. I appreciate you staying apprised of all of these things, because there certainly is a lot. And would you say 1,500 bills passed?
Nearly
1,200?
1,200 bills, yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, so it, requires a lot of attention. And as pointed out, some of these things could consequently have great effect on the city, so we need to be alert to them. And to Councilwoman Kern Shear's, point, we all really need, as citizens, need to be paying attention, because as these bills move forward and maybe some succeed, what is the impact locally? So it might be one thing to support an idea, but what is it actually going to cost? Maybe something we ought to be considering. So, thank you. Okay. Jack, you got 1 minute. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome, Mr. Reed.
I'll be brief.
I know you like to talk a lot.
Try to restrain myself. Just going to give an update on the Richmond Road paving. The milling will begin tonight. We're going to start at the seam in front of the Holiday Inn, and that's where the pavement ends. If you're out there, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it'll go all the way out to Governor Berkeley. Crews are actually setting up as we speak, and they're going to begin at about 6 or 6:30, removing the old asphalt. This is a mill and fill operation. What that means is as we're milling, the pavers are going to be kind of trailing them and paving at the same time. Starting at the Holiday Inn and headed out of town, we're going to do 5 lanes total, half a mile each lane. We think it'll be a week to complete everything, but weather dependent, if it does begin to rain, we're going to have to stop. We can do some milling and sprinkling, but if it's a hard downpour, then we'll have to stop what we're doing and regroup another day. As soon as we're finished, again with the rain, we hope 1 week, but it'll probably spread into 2. Later in the month, we'll come out and stripe. But you've seen the little stickers on the road. Those will be out there to delineate the lanes to keep everything safe. If you have any questions, let me know.
No questions, but I do want to thank you and everyone. The work that has been done on Jamestown Road and York Street certainly looks like one of the better jobs that we've had done in a number of years, and so I applaud you for that. But I also applaud you for holding off on this Richmond Road project with the recognition that it wouldn't likely have been done by this past weekend. And so I think that was a smart decision with all the extra thousands of folks in your town to hold that off. And so looking forward to getting that done. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reed. And I just want to say on a different project is really appreciate the work done on Capitol Landing Road. Huge difference, especially with the grand opening of the sports center. Now that facility's operational. Getting that right lane drivable again has made a huge difference. And also, I think your crews filled some potholes down in front of Skipwith.
Yes, sir.
So appreciate that getting done while you're waiting for the paving as well. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question actually about just letting people know about the timeline. Is this information that's going to be put on social media? I guess if somebody wants to know how long this is going to take, and they don't have to be watching right now, that the kind of the typical blast out of information that Nicole would do.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the update, and my information was the same as Ms. Kern Shear's about letting people know, because did hear from some people on my side of town that they weren't aware about the Jamestown Road paving, and I know it's hard to get the word out to everyone, but the more avenues we can spread the word, the better.
Well, thank you. I don't have any additional questions, but just wanted to thank you and your team for working around the clock to get this done. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Okay, takes us now to City Council communications. Anybody have anything they'd like to offer? In your pack, on the agenda, for those watching online and here in the audience, you'll see a calendar of events, schedule of meetings rather, through the month, and hope that if there's something in there that strikes your interest, you might show up and participate. It leads us now to item 7, which is open forum, and I know we have one patient speaker's card here.
I'm
but-
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I did want to ask a question during council communications.
Okay.
And it is about cellular service. I've had many folks ask about cellular service in town, it was better this weekend. First of all, I want to say kudos, right? Because this weekend, it seemed to be very well. But one quick thing I did want to ask about was, what's going on exactly?
Why is it so bad? Is
Yeah,
that what you
I
mean?
think that like we've talked, there many people have commented that something seems to be different. And is it related to something that we're doing or people coming in town? Or just, I think just a little moment of communication to the public about, especially down here in the immediate area about
Sure,
the cellular
sure.
service.
And the issue is specific to Verizon.
Yes.
William & Mary is doing roof construction at Barrett Hall. That's where the primary macro site for Verizon is currently located. In order for them to do that construction, they have to take the tower down. They don't want it radiating. It's obviously a safety and liability issue. They did turn it back on over the weekend from, I think, Thursday night to Sunday night. They did turn that back on. There was no work that's going to be happening during that time. But they have turned it off again. The temporary, the cell on wheels that you see in front of PBK operates at significantly less capacity than the macro site at Barrett Hall, which is why cell phone coverage on the Verizon side is really struggling right now. The work at at Barrett Hall is supposed to last through the month and be done through the month, to be done completed by the end of the month. But they're also going to be working on weekends, so they won't let us, or they won't turn it back on until that work is done. So we're going to be limping along on the Verizon side until the end of the month, until that construction at Barrett Hall is complete.
Okay, well, I appreciate the update for folks who have been asking and who want to know that there is something going on, and it is time limited, and so I appreciate that information.
And if I could just add, Mayor and members of council, this is not a city project, and yes, we were able to get it turned on, but this is not within the city's control or a city project. So we appreciate Mark calling a friend to have the cellular turned on for July 4th, but we apologize for the inconvenience, but it's not a city project.
Mark, can you call that same friend and say, as they put this tower back up on Barrett Hall, that they add some frequency or add some juice to it? I don't know what you got to do.
There's only certain people at Verizon that will actually take my call now. I've exhausted all of that.
It is a perennial issue that we deal with, and it does often fall out of our purview. But that, Ms. Kern Chair, thank you for bringing that up. So, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so now open for my first speaker's card is Mr. Robert Yule. Thank you, sir, and thank you for your patience. Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor Pons, Vice Mayor Dent, and other council members. I'm Robert Yule, 257 Sir Thomas Lunsford Drive, Holly Hills in Williamsburg. I moved to Williamsburg 6.5 years ago based on its historic and relaxing atmosphere and to avoid 25 more years of hurricanes in Florida. Upon my arrival, I wanted to give back to the city by volunteering. I initially continued my support to the Society of Retired Executives with the Williamsburg SCORE chapter, helping small business understanding government contracting. When volunteer positions became available within the city, I volunteered to help using my expertise gained in over 50 years of work in the military and federal government. I would like to thank the City Council for selecting me initially to serve on the Architectural Review Board, and then January, a position on the Planning Commission, which I currently serve on. Luckily, I became its representative back to the ARB, where I continue to assist in preserving the historic character of this wonderful city and influencing projects like the new fire station, the police station, and the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Events Center. As a disabled veteran, I've had to transition from my daily running and biking and other sports activities that I have enjoyed my entire life. Looking for alternatives, I recently introduced to the Williamsburg Boat Club, where I hope to find meaning to inject some healthy activities through adaptive rowing in my life. After reviewing the facilities, I became concerned about the life cycle maintenance that has gone on with the dock facilities that they share with William and Mary. Built 20 years ago and not intended to last this long, it's in need of repairs. They don't meet any adaptive activities, and they're unsafe for even some of their current activities that they're performing. Therefore, I'm starting a new journey as a volunteer to help the Williamsburg Boat Club become a safe regional asset and help disabled veterans like me to find happiness outside again, using the wonderful amenities that the Tri-County area offers, while also continuing to support the growing youth and adult communities. James City County over the past few years has started efforts to help the boat club improve Chickahominy Park facilities by programming fundings for ADA restrooms facilities near the current William and Mary Boathouse and improve the road access to the dock area, but it's not sufficient. Their assistance is limited and could be improved by using the example of the Historic Triangle Recreational Facilities Authority concept to support regional clubs like the Williamsburg Boat Club and William and Mary. The Boat Club currently has 166 members. 156 of those are from Williamsburg and James City County, 2 from York County, 8 from other communities, including Hampton, Charles City, Gloucester, and even Virginia Beach. More than 95% of the members come from the Williamsburg, James City County, which really demonstrates that they are serving the local community. Since hiring an executive director and head coach with extensive national team and elite coaching experience, the club has experienced tremendous growth. This year, the club qualified 5 boats and 17 athletes to participate in the U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship held in Sarasota, Florida, the largest group in club history, and it demonstrates the local athletes can compete on a national stage while training right here in Williamsburg. Just as the city is embracing the opening of the Greater Williamsburg Sports and Event Center and its upcoming activities, the expansion of bike trails throughout the Williamsburg area region, I would like to seek your thoughts and support for adding activities such as those provided by the Williamsburg Boat Club, improving access to world-class facilities that could attract tourism, regional team competitions in rowing and aquatic sports, and the inclusion of a viable adaptive sports facility that would also help ailing veterans like myself. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the open forum, and I believe we have some closed session business, Mr. Vice Mayor.
We do. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing 2 personnel matters per subparagraph 1 concerning appointments to boards and commissions and evaluation of the city attorney, 1 property matter per subparagraph 3 regarding disposition of economic development property of which discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect bargaining position or negotiating strategy of a public body.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go into closed session and return to certify that closed session. First back in open session.
I move to approve the certification of a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia.
Second?
Ms. McKay?
Yep. Aye.
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 Ms. Kern Chair.
Aye.
All right, there's no other business. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kern Chair. Aye.
We are adjourned.